What I want to talk about today is preparing ourselves, our inner self. I'm talking about. There's various ways we got to get ready for Shabbos. Today's only Monday. And this coming Shabbos, I plan to be in New York City at 770. So it should be an interesting, nice, fun experience. And I'll definitely come back and bring you lots of, what do you want from New York? Chocolate? Hanukkah chocolate. I'll bring you back the experience, the spirit. I also want to say, if anybody wants to send a letter to the Rebbe's Ohel, feel free to give it to me tomorrow after the shiur, and I'll take a letter to the Rebbe's Ohel for you if you want me to do so. And I'll try to bring back some special treat for when I'm back at the shiur. That you know what, the Rebbetzin will tell me who attended well and who participated. Then you'll get a special treat from New York. Either way, we're talking about preparing our inner selves today. We see that every day of the week is infused by Shabbos, and Shabbos blesses every day of the week. And we're going to continue this theme throughout our discussions over the coming weeks. This week was the Shabbos Project. I hope you all had a very special Shabbos. But as you know, and as we see, Shabbos is not something that just meant to show up Friday evening. It's Shabbos. We got to prepare. And we saw how Shabbos is the time of intimate unity between God and his world. Just to recap that idea, we discussed all the benefits of rest. And rest is a gift. But as many gifts, if we just take it for granted, what happens? Well, we don't exactly appreciate it, and we lose that appreciation. Therefore, although Shabbos is a gift, as we mentioned, the gift of rest to enjoy quality time with our family and to benefit from not having fatigue and burnout and all the other things. But Shabbos is also about commemorating God's creating the world in 6 days and resting on the seventh. God liberating our ancestors from the slavery in Egypt. And therefore, we need to take a day off work to reflect and realize we're not slaves to our jobs. We have a far greater value than just the work we do, that our contribution to society, about who we are inherently. And of course, it's the day that we said, in a much deeper and more mystical sense, it's a day of cosmic rest. What does cosmic rest mean? Cosmic rest in the sense, and very appropriate to have all the planets up there now, but that Shabbos is the time of that intimate unity between God and the world. It's a time when we are elevated to, so to say, the king's chamber on high, and are, in a sense, we're in the presence of God's glory. But you will not, or I will not, none of us will really appreciate being in God's glory if we're not in tune. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, that we need to have that spiritual sensitivity in order to be conscious of that reality. You know, think of an example. I saw there was some incident that happened at the Louvre recently, another robbery at the Louvre. It seems like the Louvre, they're too lax with their security. So this time it wasn't the Mona Lisa. Although, you know, when the Mona Lisa was missing from the Louvre, more people visited the Louvre than to see the missing Mona Lisa, which again is a reminder to me, when we don't have something, all of a sudden we begin to realize what we're missing. And think about the same thing with Shabbos, that if we don't appreciate Shabbos, if we're not in tune with Shabbos, we come to the realization of what we're missing out. I mean, I'm not suggesting that, but let me work with this metaphor, this analogy, and then I'll take your questions. But you think about, there are certain, I don't know, classical works of art. That's something somebody spoke with me yesterday. Oh, I know what it was. I was attending a pre-Kinnos workshop, because now what they're doing very cleverly is some of the workshops, the Kinnos has gotten a little bit smaller. They've changed the whole format of the Kinnos in some ways. So they used to have a few days of workshops, and now they made them one day of workshops on Thursday, but you could elect to go to a workshop on Wednesday. Or some of the workshops you start now, there's never enough time to sit at a workshop. So they start it now on Zoom, and then it continues at the conference in person in another way. They give you homework to do beforehand. So I was attending one of the workshops that had to do with one of my pet peeves that I don't really love and enjoy. It had to do with raising funds, etc. So this workshop, he was talking about, you have so many Jews who donate to many causes that aren't Jewish. For example, there are Jews who perhaps they like to give to hospitals. Maybe there are people, but let's talk about hospitals is at least something compassionate. It's something that's caring for all. But how about those who give to art, but will never give to Chabad, to a yeshiva, to a shul? How do we get that person who's giving to art or to music, which are also important things? You know, we got to support art and music. But how do we get, or SPCA or other causes, but they're not giving towards the spiritual causes? So that was the discussion. They haven't given exactly an answer. It's about, they gave. The answer was, you have to that's the job of a shliach, of a rabbi, or a rebbitzin. Or, by the way, you don't have to be a rabbi or rebbitzin to inspire these individuals. Come sit inside. You could sit at a table. You don't have to sit in the back, like in the back of the classroom. There's room up front if you want. Anyways, is it relevant? I just don't want to lose my train of thought. Oh, very good. You have to be artful. There we are. So yeah, they were discussing that was the idea, really. It's not rocket science, but I'm taking from what I heard last night in the session about ourselves, about Shabbos. If a person doesn't like art and you take them to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Met, okay, are they going to appreciate it or are they going to be bored? I'm asking you. They're going to be bored. Thank you, Jim. They're going to be bored. If you take somebody who doesn't like classical music and you bring them to the Witz, where is it, to the Lyric Theater on an afternoon where they have the matinees and you can watch the Johannesburg Philharmonic Orchestra playing, that person's going to fall asleep. They're going to play on their phone. It's not of interest to them, right? You see where I'm going? So what I'm saying is that even though these are universally lauded and as outstanding interests, thank you very much, but someone who has spent no time honing appreciation for the fine art or the music or whatever it is not going to find that amusing. They're going to be bored in the museum. They're going to be bored at the concert. It's dull for them. It's uninteresting. Without the same thing I say in our analogy is that if we don't prepare for Shabbos Kodesh, if we don't study about Shabbos, we're not going to have that appreciation. And I would say for many people, Shabbos can be a difficult day. Oh, yeah, I can't use my phone. I can't drive the car. I can't do this. I can't do that. It's too difficult. But if we learn more about Shabbos, which is what we're planning to do here, does somebody mind to tell them that there's a class going on here? Is it on the roof? No, it's out here. Okay. So in that sense, Shabbos, which is our elevated bond with God, is something that occurs every single week at the same designated appointed time. You don't have to do anything on your part. It's a gift God gives you. But you will not appreciate that gift unless we develop that sensitivity and appreciation for Shabbos. That's the point of what we're saying here is if we don't take the time to prepare ourselves spiritually before entering Shabbos, then we will not be able to fully experience its transcendent elements. And that's the thing. Yes, that's why we built up the various levels. You might appreciate the rest. You might appreciate the leisure, but I'm talking about appreciating the spiritual benefits of Shabbos, which I think there are many people who might be very religious, but don't appreciate it per se. Maybe they're not utilizing their time to study, to tap into the energy that's present on Shabbos. Would you agree with me? Yeah? So to experience the sublime holiness of Shabbos Kodesh, I want to say we need to become more attuned to spirituality during the whole entire week. And this is something when you study Hasidus, many people start their day every day studying Hasidus, Kabbalistic teachings. And it stresses, it tells us, it emphasizes that we not only need to prepare our food, as we discussed last week, the Gemara says, Misha Tarach B'Erev Shabbos, Yechel B'Shabbos. Only somebody who toils or labors before Shabbos will have what to eat on Shabbos. Wow. If you don't work, you're not going to have food to eat. But spiritually, you'll starve, okay? But the truth is, no, you could order from Checker 60 and you could maybe have food in the fridge. You don't mind eating. That's not the point. We're going spiritually now. Spiritually speaking, this spiritual food just as there's physical edible food. And that spiritual food, unless we're in tune with spirituality, we're not going to appreciate it. If our home is a wreck and a mess, it's not the right environment to tune into the oasis of time that Shabbos provides us. What about preparing our bodies for Shabbos? Our body also needs a cleansing. Back in the day, when there was no running water and plumbing, and people didn't take showers or baths regularly, Judaism mandated that you did have a bath every week for Shabbos. That was novel. That was different because not everyone did that, right? We also need to prepare our inner selves, like I said, our spiritual side. And we see this where the verse tells us that, where is it? V'shamru b'nei Yisrael es Shabbos, that the children of Israel should observe the Shabbos. Right? We sing it every Shabbos in the Amida. In fact, it's for before Kiddush. Let's do a nice practice together. Shamru v'nei Yisrael es HaShabbos la'asos es HaShabbos ledoros berisol. You know that one? Yes. Okay. So the children of Israel shall observe the Shabbos. I'm emphasizing one point here: to make the Shabbos. What does it mean to make the Shabbos? To make the Shabbos. The verse continues, throughout the generations as an everlasting covenant. What does it mean to make the Shabbos? Now, obviously, in the simple reading, as we know, which means a verse has to first be understood literally. The verse says that by observing Shabbos, yes, Chaim. No, don't leave us. Stay with us, Chaim. You got to go. You sure? Ay. Okay, absolutely. It was in the Parsha last week, right? Everything Sarah says, you say yes. You want to what? I can only after the share. We're on YouTube and live. Can I call you afterwards? Okay. I'll call you after the share. All right, Chaim. What's that? Okay. So, obviously, when we observe Shabbos every week, the literal understanding here is that the Jewish people make the day serve as this everlasting covenant between God and the Jewish people by observing Shabbos, right? But let's understand something in particular. Notice that we highlighted the word la'asos or la'asot et HaShabbat, which means to make Shabbos. How do you make Shabbos? Aren't we merely preserving the covenant? We're not making or creating it, are we? Are we creating Shabbos? But I don't want to get too sophisticated here. Very basic. Chassidus tells us that in a very real sense, we make Shabbos every week. How do you make Shabbos? Yes, it's true that Shabbos has an essential holiness. It exists. It's a gift God gave us. It's there already. But the way that we personally experience that holiness of Shabbos is influenced how? La'asos, the way you make it. The avoda, what you do to prepare for it during the week. And this is the point it says here in Torah Or, as you can see on the screen from the teachings of the Alter Rebbe. He says that from this verse we could learn what it means to make Shabbos. How do you make Shabbos? Through the mitzvahs that you do during the week, during the 6 days of the week. The extent to which a person can be in tune with that spiritual light that's present is relative to our own spiritual preparations, our spiritual preparedness. And therefore he says here, to make Shabbos, this indicates the people of Israel create the holiness of Shabbos by performing the mitzvahs throughout the week. We have 6 days of the week when we're able to study, to learn, to do mitzvahs. And so to fully appreciate the spiritual element, the nature of Shabbos, that it's not just a day that you get to take off of work, or a day to spend with family, or a day. I have friends who said that, they do their golf. I said, well, first spend time with the Holy One, then you'll get the hole in one. But either way, you have to work during the week to spiritually sensitize ourselves, to transform ourselves spiritually. And each Shabbos is the result of our collective preparation of the days that came before it. Which is why personally, sometimes I come into Shabbos and I feel like I'm on a high, because that week, wow, I was spiritually great. And some weeks, I don't know what happens. We get distracted. We have things and when Shabbos comes, I just feel like, what do they say? 7 days without Torah study makes 1 week. So what we are saying is that we make the Shabbos by the way that we live our week. And I think it's very, very important. Yeah.
They also say remember that as much as we keep Shabbos and kids.
You're going to see this theme throughout over the coming weeks as we discuss, as we learn. You'll see that theme come up numerous times And that's an old expression. More than the Jews kept Shabbos, Shabbos kept the Jews. Absolutely. Rabbi Moshe wanted to say something? No. All right. Jill, you had something to say? All right. So that's very important. And I think this also fits in the point of Nisha Tarach, a person who labors before Shabbos will have what to eat on Shabbos. Yes, it might be talking about food, that you have to do something to prepare the food, but I think we're also talking about the spiritual element, the soul, that the way we prepare for Shabbos is the way we're going to experience Shabbos. That Shabbos has very much to do our spiritual preparation. So let's put it up here. Haven't we talked about pragmatic? The food, the more food we prepare, the more delicious delicacies, gastronomic delights we're going to enjoy. Yes? We talked emotionally that we get personally involved in the preparations of Shabbos, and so we're going to appreciate the value of Shabbos. Only somebody who really was involved in the preparation will have that appreciation of what they experience. And now we're emphasizing the spiritual preparation. And the more we spiritually prepare, the more we'll have that manifestation of the spirituality on Shabbos. And because a true appreciation of Shabbos requires that spiritual preparation, commitment, thank you, there are a number of things that is customary to do on Friday. Here's you want to take some notes, and I'll take notes to hear what you do. But first I'll share with you what I'm familiar with of how we prepare ourselves spiritually for the holiness of Shabbos. So let's think of a few things. Many men immerse in a mikvah on a Friday afternoon as a form of spiritual cleansing. Okay, so that's something. There are some ladies. It's not a widespread custom. Ladies generally only go after Nida, but some people do. Certainly Rosh Hashanah and Kippur time. But the idea of going into a mikvah is to remove the impurities of the week and enter into the holiness of Shabbos. We're removing the impurities of the past week, which is also why we discussed why we have special Shabbos clothing, why we don't wear on Shabbos what we wear during the week. I guess, physically speaking, you could say, okay, I cleaned my clothing, but there's something about having a spiritual, that I don't wear the same thing for my weekday activities as I wear when I'm in a spiritual state of Shabbos and Yom Tov. And anytime a person immerses in the mikvah water surrounds the entire body at once. Other than a sukkah, I can't think of any other such mitzvah. The mikvah, you're completely surrounded and submerged in the water, right? Being submerged in a mikvah, which our sages tell us that represents a total immersion in holiness. Now, that's why we're not allowed to wear anything when we go into a mikvah. You take off even a ring or a bracelet because we're not allowed to have a chatzitza, any separation between our body and the water. Of course, it's no ordinary water in a mikvah. A mikvah is a special body of water that is built according to the particular requirements that it has, the 40 sa'ah, particular measurement of natural running water. So this is in preparation for Shabbos that many people do when you're completely immersing in holiness on this day. So we immerse in a mikvah to be more spiritually in tune on Shabbos. What other preparations can you think of? Many people take some time on Friday, just like you might do at the end of the year. People do this at the end of the week. And what is it? To review, how was my behavior during the past week? Right? To change the things that need to be fixed. Are there areas in my week that I need to... Now, it's not Rosh Hashanah. It's not the whole big... There are many people who do it every day. By the way, every night before I go to sleep, I say a passage in the Kriya Shema Shalamita, the bedtime Shema. And that passage starts off with the words, Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the Universe, where I think of the past day. Who did I vex? Who did I upset? Do I forgive them? Will they forgive me? It's a discussion, right? Every day people have a cheshbon nefesh. So just as you end every day with this stock taking of the past day, I would say it's worthwhile at the end of the week to review our behavior the past week and say, I'm taking a little cheshbon nefesh, how I could fix the past week. Yeah?
Not only reviewing the week, but also reviewing the parsha.
Oh, I'm getting there. I said I'll first finish. This is what I said before. Let me finish my list and I'll take your list. Okay, so I'll first finish my list, then I'll take any other things. My list included reviewing the parsha as well, which is called Shnai Mikra V'Echad Targum. So studying the parsha of the week, twice each verse, and once the commentary. Some people will do it doesn't have, traditionally it's the parsha, but not everybody does the parsha. Some people do other parts of Torah. And it's all equally special for our spiritual preparation. Okay, sharing Shabbos food with those who are less fortunate than ourselves. You might walk into Chabad House on a Friday and you will see that we have all our food parcels being prepared. Currently, we do 50 big parcels and depends on the week, between 50 and 100 small parcels. For the Shabbos project, we did a lot more. And Vusi prepares it here. And we have a team of dedicated volunteers who collect them on a Friday and visit people. You don't have to take from Chabad House. You could prepare and share with others. So you have the idea of Cheshbon HaNefesh. You have the idea of studying the Parsha. You have the idea of Mivtzayim. There are people who go on a Friday. The Rebbe started this custom, and every Friday when students finish their studies, I did this since I'm 13, where you go and take your tefillin and Shabbos candles and a Parsha insight. This is how the Rebbe gave Chabad boys and girls this courage to go out there in the world, and some chutzpah, and some people who were able to use that and succeed very well in business as well. Because you learn at a young age to reach out to people. Excuse me, are you Jewish? Would you like to hear something on the Parsha of the week? Would you like to don tefillin, take your spiritual blood pressure? Mivtzayim, Bikur Chalim. I do it any day of the week. I used to do it only Thursdays because Fridays get hectic, but it could be any day of the week. I recently had an incident where I called a rabbi. I asked him to go visit somebody. He wasn't from the Chabad community, but I asked the rabbi, would you mind? There's somebody at a particular hospital and I can't make it to the hospital. It's not in my area and I won't get there today, but there's somebody there who's unwell. This rabbi tells me if he's not my congregant, he's not my problem. So I said, Rabbi, he's all of our problems. We are all Jews. By the way, this is not the first time I've had it. I've had that a few times. And sometimes it's come to, I don't want to repeat that whole long story that I had before Rosh Hashanah a couple of years ago, but you might remember that somebody called Rabbi Katz Chabad House and said, their rabbi's too busy to visit their dying father. Can somebody from Chabad go? Now, Rabbi Katz, I know, would have gone. He goes, it happened to be his father's yard, so I couldn't go that day, so he asked me to go. And I actually was reluctant to go because I have busy Fridays too. I said, can't you go? Why can't? Anyways, I agreed to go. I wound up, instead of visiting this one person, it was during COVID, I wound up seeing something like 14 Jews that day in the hospital. When I got to the hospital, this family waved me down. They saw the mitzvah tank in the hospital parking lot. We got like 2 men to put on tefillin and their 3 children. We said a blessing, a prayer to Hillel. Then in the hospital, when I went to the ICU to visit this man, which was a whole difficulty getting into the ICU, I managed to visit this man and his 2 sons were with him. And then when I was blowing the shofar for him, there's a lady down the hall in the ICU. She says, Rabbi, could you come see me too? So I went to see her. Then I knew my own congregant, Mickey Sesportus, was in the hospital that day. Went to see him. He happened to have a Jewish roommate. As I'm leaving the hospital, there's another man who's visiting his father, sees me, says, can't you come visit? So before I knew it, there were 14 people who got visited. And then they asked me to do the funeral. The rabbi came. He was very insulted that I did the funeral. I said, look, I don't want to get involved in the faribbles here. That you got to sort out with the family. And the family made a decent donation to Chabad House afterwards to say thank you. So it turned out well. But anyways, with this rabbi, I happened to have blackmailed him a little bit. And later he thanked me. I said to the rabbi, listen here, if you can't go visit him, I'm going to go there today. I'll go get food and do everything, even though it's not my area and I'm dealing with other issues. But then I'm telling you, I'm going to start Chabad Bikur Cholim, visiting people in that hospital that's near you, and you're not going to have that credit anymore. So you can visit your own congregants. I threatened. Believe it or not, it wasn't comfortable. I felt really bad. He said, okay, I'll do it. And then later he sent me pictures that he visited this person in the hospital, and I think it worked out to his benefit, but there was a reluctance. He's not my congregant, I don't have to do that. The Rebbe taught us that we're all responsible for each other. The truth is, the Torah teaches that. The Rebbe emphasized it to the extent that every Chabadnik knows that it is our problem. But unfortunately, sometimes people feel it's not their problem. Giving less chasadim, acts of kindness. Tzedakah, giving charity before Shabbos. So I could think of many other things, inviting people to join us for a Shabbos meal, etc. But these are all part of the spiritual preparations. Even though I hacked them there, I mixed some other physical preparations that are also symbolic of the spiritual preparation that we do in honor of Shabbos. And why do I say that? Because the truth is the physical and spiritual preparations are actually, I would say, they're what's the word? There's a, I'm looking for it. They're intertwined. They're inextricably connected to each other. And one cannot be without the other. Famous story of Reb Pinchas Karitzer. You know that story? I always tell it Sukkot time, but I'll review it for you right now briefly. Reb Pinchas Karitzer was a particular, was it him? I think it was him. It was a rabbi who lived in a particular neighborhood, and he, in the old country, somebody telling, I don't know how these builders, these guys put their music on as if there's nobody else around. Anyways, Rebbe said, did you get him to turn it off? Thank you. I don't know what they're thinking. Yeah. So Reb Pinchas Karitzer was a very elite rabbi, and he liked to spend his time and study. Now, of course, it's important to study. We talked about how Erev Shabbos, you have to spend time reviewing the parsha of the week. But that doesn't negate the time that you're going to go visit somebody who's ill in a hospital, right? They're both important. You have to prioritize both. Reb Pinchas prioritized his study at the expense of being there for others. Because he was a very wise person, many people were seeking his counsel. But he was always too busy, not just too busy. One thing is being too busy. He was never available, never, ever. He says, I don't want to be bothered by people. I want to sit in the library and study. Go to the other rabbis to bother them with your discussions. Me, I sit and study all day. And people began to despise him and dislike him, to the extent that when it came Sukkot, he built his own sukkah. You know, it's a mitzvah to have guests every Shabbos, but particularly on Yom Tov, when we have the Ushpizin, we have the spiritual guests, our patriarchs and matriarchs who come to visit us in the sukkah. And so he decided, as we were leaving shul, he asked people, who wants to be my guest? Nobody wanted to be his guest. He was irate, you know, is that the right word? Irritable and moody, never interested in people. You want to sit in the sukkah with a rabbi who's not going to be friendly to you? So nobody wanted to come. He said, all right, that's the price I pay to be a wise scholar. No time for people. That's all right. I'll pay that price. He comes home, and who's the special guest who's supposed to come in the sukkah? Listen, I got to be honest with you. I've never seen them. But we're told that Avram and Sarah come the first night, and Yitzchak and Rivka second night, etc. each night. Reb Pinchas Karitzer was a spiritually in tune person. So he did see them. He sees Avram and Sarah outside his sukkah. He says, come on inside. I've been looking for guests. And they said, no, thank you. What do you mean, no, thank you? You're here. He said, a sukkah where no one else is comfortable to be, Avram and Sarah say they're also not comfortable to be. And that's when Reb Pinchas Karitzer changed his ways, and from being the off-putting, irate, unpleasant rabbi, he became one who divided his time in a way that he had more time for others. He still was a great scholar and teacher and thinker and all academic, but he still made time for others as well. I remember when I was in Oxford 24 years ago, I studied in London for a year, and I went to Oxford for Shabbos sometimes. And there was a particular rabbi there, I remember, but maybe I won't say his name so it's not public. And he was on sabbatical. Where was his sabbatical? I remember Rabbi Weinberg took a sabbatical one year and went to Israel. In fact, at the shir in the morning, Rabbi Weinberg was telling us when he was on sabbatical in Israel, how he spent a lot of time with Rabbi Zalman Nechemya Goldberg. Rabbi Zalman Nechemya Goldberg is a rabbi who did he give you a son smicha? Some of my friends got smicha from him, not me. I didn't get smicha from him, but it's quite a privilege to get smicha from Rabbi Zalman Nechemya Goldberg. Anyways, what happened with Rabbi Zalman Nechemya? Rabbi Zalman Nechemya was this kind of rabbi who would run from one shir to the next, from one house to the next, and somehow he always had what to teach. And Rabbi Weinberg was saying he was amazed because, how does this man, he just finished one shir, he didn't have time to prepare the next shir, and he's running from one place to the other. I can't do that, although sometimes I'm put into that position. Hence, the quality of my shir is not that good in those cases. But this rabbi does that. So it's quite impressive. But where was I getting at? I don't remember how I digressed here. Oh, I remember the rabbi there in London, at Oxford, he was on sabbatical. He spent nearly all day in the library. What's that library called? Alan Franco was here a few weeks ago. He told us the name of that library. It just skipped my head. Anyone remember when Alan was here? He gave us a whole tour of the Oxford Library. If you remember its name, it skipped my head. I mentioned it yesterday. Huh? Yeah, the Bodleian Library, exactly. This rabbi spent all day in the Bodleian Library. Say it again. Bodleian Library. Huh? Not Bosnian, not Bosnia. Bodleian, right? Repronounce it? Bodleian Library. Okay. I'll Google exactly how to pronounce it. Either way, Bodleian Library in Oxford, and this rabbi basically spent all day. But he would come on Shabbos to the meal. He'd join us. It was just interesting to see that he says, "This is my Bodleian." That's where you go. Bodleian, Bodleian Library. But Shabbos is a time with that spiritual connection. We can't negate the physical interconnectedness of it. And in fact, Kabbalah explains, I'll get into Kabbalah in a second about the fingernails, but any other ways that you prepare that you wanted to say? Yeah? Very good. To prepare Dvar Torah, share an insight at the Shabbos table. We love it. Our kids come home every week, and they always have these beautiful insights to share at the Shabbos table. It's wonderful. In fact, this Shabbos had the former mayor of Johannesburg, future president Herman Mashaba, and his wife, and some other people, and I think they were quite amazed to see the kids' involvement at the Shabbos meal. That it's not just adult talk about all kinds of things, that the kids get involved too and talk about what they learned and studied during the week. It's something very special that we do. Yeah.
Yeah. Bring added value to your host.
To bring added value to your host. Very good. All right, I got to think what I'm going to bring to New York to my host this week. Okay. Some wise words and whiskey. So, absolutely, wise words and whiskey. So, Kabbalah explains something else I wanted to share with you. And what is that? Let me just find my place in my booklet here. Yeah. Kabbalah tells us that the fingernails and toenails are emblematic of something called klipa. What's klipa? Literally, klipa means a shell, a husk. But for lack of a better word, I'm going to use something more extreme: evil. Not all klipa is evil. There's klipas noga that has the opportunity to be used for negative or positive. Go to the Kabbalah. I'm sure the Rebbetzin will talk more about it while I'm away and how klipa cannot be evil. But I'm just using that. Klipa could be something that's neutral. It could be evil or not evil. But what do I say? I want to just give this Kabbalistic idea here. The sages explain the nails grow from the body. They receive life from the body, yet, unlike the rest of the body, we don't feel pain when they're cut. I guess the only exception you could say is here, but the hair could hurt more if you pull it, right? But we'll leave that for a separate. Actually, you could say this about the hair too, which is why many people get a haircut Erev Shabbos. My father used to get his haircut every Friday. Every Friday, I like to get his hair cut. I don't have that time. But we cut our fingernails, our toenails, and our hair before Shabbos, if possible. But particularly our nails, it's a demonstration of preparation for Shabbos, that the nails are fresh and cut and not untidy, unkempt, and dirty. But I think also the idea that to a degree, the nails are symbolic, that it looks like they're their own entity separate from the body, like as if they're independent. And so in that sense, the Kabbalah says that everything in this world, including klipa, receives its sustenance, obviously, from God. Both positive and negative, everything comes from Hashem, right? But evil manages at the same time to develop into an entity that's seemingly independent from God, that's detached from its godly source. And this is something that's discussed at great length in Kabbalah, this whole concept. But what I'm taking from this Kabbalistic idea is that when we cut our nails on Erev Shabbos, what's happening is we are demonstrating, in a sense, that we're removing ourselves from the world of klipa in order to lift ourselves up to appreciate that exalted state of Shabbos. In fact, there's a Hasidic expression: before pointing your fingers at somebody else, cut your nails. Okay, because when we point our finger at someone else, we have 3 fingers pointing right back at ourselves, and we could see our own impurities, our own imperfections, our own shortcomings. And when Shabbos comes around, we want to see the good in others, and we will be able to manifest the good that was within ourselves. Again, I think that's an idea that perhaps needs more time and attention to understand how klipa, but think about it. Is fire good or bad? Fire could be used in both ways. It could warm food, it could warm a home, it could cook, it could weld, you could do so many good things with fire. Yet fire could be destructive. Same thing with money, same thing with food. Food is delicious, but if it's kosher, if it's healthy, etc., it could be destructive if it's not. And the same thing about klipa is demonstrating not that all klipa is bad, it depends what you're going to do with it. If you use it in a spiritual way, it's going to become good. So when we cut our nails before Shabbos, it's a reminder to ourselves that we shouldn't see ourselves as independent entities from Hashem, like the nails shouldn't see themselves as independent entities of the body. The nail grows from the body, receives its sustenance, its livelihood from the body, but it shouldn't feel like it's independent. Again, it's a concept in Kabbalah and Hasidic circles why people will get their hair cut before Shabbos and the nails cut before Shabbos. Besides for the appearance of looking more neat and presentable, it also has the spiritual aspect as well. I want to share with you another interesting point, which has a dual side. Yeah. We have to wash our hands after cutting nails and hair. Very good point. Very good. Thank you. In fact, the Italian barber I go to, for many years I went to an Indian. Okay, I'll go back. When I came here as part of Hatzalah, there was this Clippers place in Norwood Mall, and they used to give Hatzalah for free. All we had to do was give a nice tip. Anyways, they stopped. So I found somebody from my shul mentioned to me, an Indian barber, 50 Rand, he was giving my haircuts. But then I was getting comments from my kids and my wife and others. Oy, 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 oy. So I stopped going to the 50 Rand barber, and I found this Italian guy in Bluebird. Somebody from my shul introduced me to him. Good rates, by the way, $150 a haircut. And he does my hair. He just did my haircut last week. And he's so prepared. He has the negavasa there for you. Right? Now, what does negavasa mean? In the Hebrew word is netilat yadayim, washing their hands. Negavasa means the water, nail water, because we wash our nails, because the nails can be, by the way, physically or physiologically, nails can trap in a lot of germs and stuff. That's why you got to clean them more regularly. But also from a spiritual perspective, it's this concept of kalipa. And the same with the hair, which is why we wash our hands after a haircut. Another example of how necessary physical preparations are inextricable, are inseparable from the spiritual readiness that we have to be in a state of for Shabbos, is the requirement to check our pockets before Shabbos. Now, why do we have to check our pockets before Shabbos? There's 2 points. One is, okay, in Joburg we have an Eruv, in not all areas, but most areas we have an Eruv, so you could carry. But what if you're in Crown Heights, where I come from, where there's no Eruv, or the Eruv is very controversial? In fact, I remember once in Brooklyn, there's a big street called Ocean Parkway. And there's also Eastern Parkway. You can't do an Eruv on those streets because that is a definitive Reshus Harabim, a public domain. I saw an article I wanted to read this morning about public domains. There's a whole bunch of different kinds. So maybe for tomorrow's share, I'll sharpen my mind and read up on it and share with you so you can understand more about the Eruv. Although the Eruv is very complex. I can't give you a whole share on the Eruv properly. We'll need somebody to come in and give us a proper share. But I can give it to you in a nutshell. But let me read up on it tonight to refine, to polish, to crystallize the ideas for myself. But even if there is an Eruv, you have to check your pockets that you're not carrying muktzah. If you're part of Hatzalah or CSO, you might be able to carry a cell phone for emergencies, but that's only if you're part of an emergency response team. And even still, you can't just use the phone randomly. It's only for emergencies. You can't just take anything muktzah in your pockets, only what's going to be used for the emergency purposes. So basically, we check our pockets before Shabbos regardless. I was going to tell you about the Eruv. I had a cute little joke. So once I saw somebody carrying, you have to understand the Eruv in Brooklyn has a lot of controversy. Why? Some rabbis say it's good, you could carry in it. Some rabbis say it's not good, you're not allowed to carry in it. I see this guy carrying an Ocean Parkway, which is definitive Reshus Harabim. It is a neighborhood, a street that has 600,000 people traveling on the street every day. If you have so many people traveling on such a big domain, then you know that street is a public domain. It is never going to be able to have an Eruv. So this guy says, no, it's not prohibited to carry her. No rabbi forbids it. Did that fall flat? Start again. it's legally a public domain, so you can't have an Erev there. So the guy who said he was carrying, he said, of course, no rabbi prohibited carrying here. No rabbi would ever permit carrying there either. Okay, some of my jokes don't. I'll have to work on how to tell that one better. Apologies. But here's the fascinating thing. Oh, I skipped my slide. Preparing for Shabbos with our spirit, soul searching, reviewing the Torah portion, feeding the poor. You could think of other examples of how to prepare. We spoke about the mikvah, but this is the thing. What's the word for a garment? What's a garment called in Hebrew? Very good, very good. Now, what is the term for inspecting our garment, for checking it? Anyone know what that is called? No, that's not the word I wanted to tell you. Searching our pockets would be, I guess, bedika. That's not the word I wanted to get to. I wanted to get to something else. You see, I have to keep my concentration. I wanted to get to the word for treachery, for betrayal. Because during the week, we are involved in all kinds of activities. Maybe we have aggressive business dealings. Maybe we did something that betrayed a friend, or maybe we did some kind of a treacherous act. Huh? A shavna begadna. There you go. Exactly. This is where it comes in. We acted treacherously. I'm not saying it's appropriate. I'm just saying that before Shabbos comes, we check our beged, meaning we have to check, not only physically checking our pockets if we have muktzah in the pocket, something that we shouldn't be carrying, money, pen, or whatever it might be, but we also have to check ourselves. That's what I was saying before about doing the cheshbon hanefesh. Have I behaved in ways that were a betrayal to my personality, to who I am, or to God, or to my friends and family? And if we did, how are we going to fix that? So only when our beged has been carefully examined and is empty are we ready to experience the sweetness and the holiness of Shabbos Kodesh. And that was the point I wanted to say here, which is why we check, the interconnectedness in a way of checking of the physical preparation, of how it is inextricably connected with the spiritual preparedness for Shabbos. Any questions? No questions? All right. Got a lot to chew over, to process. Let me look at some other ideas that I wanted to discuss with you today. Oh, yeah?
During the weekend, I know that our rabbi at Torah Kennedy always emphasizes that at least one prayer in the whole of Shabbos constantly look more into it.
Yeah, many times people find that they're rushing through prayers during the week because they have to get to this appointment, that appointment. Hopefully Shabbos, we have more time to spend a little bit more engaged, which is why most shuls during the week, there's no singing in prayers. You're moving at a quicker pace, but Shabbos comes, you sing more because you want to be more, involved. In fact, you say nishmas, kolatz moisei temarna, every fiber of my being, every bone in my body wants to sing and say the praises of Hashem. So I want you to think of the spiritual significance of how engaging mindfully can help us be more spiritually sensitive to the holiness of Shabbos. Think of some ways that we, this is an important one. I'm going to get to that next, of how we could be prepared. Okay? Think of at home. We're cleaning and sweeping the house. What do you think that's a physical act? What do you think the spiritual character refinement corresponding to that might be? Oh, there's a lot. Toyameha. When you taste it, simple. If you taste it, you know that it's delectable, that it's nice. And acts of cooking are forbidden on Shabbos, so you're able to, obviously you can add some salt to the soup. And my mother used to make the soup bland because we had some guests who had cholesterol and I don't know what. So, but
there must be a spiritual point.
Yeah, that definitely is the idea of Tayameh Chaim Zachu, that by tasting it, first of all, you're extending Shabbos into the week. You're getting a taste of Shabbos already on the weekday. And I think very practically speaking, to make sure that it tastes proper, because on Shabbos you're not going to be able to fix that kugel if it's not good. So now's your chance. Sometimes the food is so good that that by the time Shabbos comes, there's nothing left. Yeah. But I wanted to get now to going back to these acts of preparation. So there were a few of them that I had in mind. One is when you're cleaning the house, to clean ourselves spiritually. When you're cleaning yourself, it's also spiritual cleansing, like we said about the mikvah. Or sweeping, getting rid of the negativity in my life. You're mixing the food to prepare your food, right? Maybe it's about bringing people together in brother and sisterhood, right? Bringing people together. So there has to be a spiritual correspondence. And as we go, we could think of others. Spicing the food. We all need dough. Everybody needs some more dough in their life. Okay, but maybe spicing the food is about adding more joy into our family, or spicing life up, breaking the monotony. Yeah.
On that point,
if you have notes, kindly
Right.
And being used,
okay.
right, many things,
Yeah.
and including human beings.
Right.
Without expression, but
Of course, it has a purpose. Yeah, we wouldn't negate that. Yeah. Is okay. Very good point. It shouldn't be used for something that is not part of the purpose of Shabbos. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's do a quick video just to break the monotony a bit, and then we'll conclude with a few other important points about anticipating and getting ready for Shabbos. Okay, so we got a quick little video here. Let your spirit die. Great.
We invite you to gather your unique ingredients to create something fresh and pleasurable. Prepared for Shabbat. Prepare for life.
The video is still playing. My apologies. I cut off the video a little bit too early by mistake. My apologies for that. Okay, so back to our discussion. Just thought it was a nice little break on how to implement all these different aspects in our life. And the idea is that in order to experience the divine aspect of the Shabbos gift, not just the physical benefit of having rest, of avoiding exhaustion and fatigue, we have to be spiritually attuned. And that's the idea that we discussed, that we create our spiritual Shabbos experience by the way we engage, whether it's in the Torah and the mitzvahs and in reflecting on the week that was, and Friday, there are many customs, and we discussed so many of them today, that are done as a spiritual preparation. Some of them require more physical activity, but they're all about the spiritual preparation for Shabbos. And even the physical preparations, as we saw, can teach us about preparing spiritually for Shabbos. I want to look at one or two more points. This one's a big one that my father used to always talk about, so it's worthwhile for us to look at this. And that is, we realize that while we have to check our pockets and do those things, but it's not only about preparing the home, the food, and the body for Shabbos, but we discussed the emotional preparation. I want to touch on another area of emotional preparation, just as it's important to be spiritually prepared. And often when people are involved in some activity, whatever it might be, what do we find happens? I just had a function yesterday and I wasn't ready on time and I get flustered and I get nervous and I start, I can do this, I can't believe you did it. What happens? Sometimes there could be, what could I say, a level of anxiety, of stress about getting everything done, getting it done on time. And sometimes we might get unpleasant. That's the Yetzer Hara. Well, particularly Erev Shabbos, okay? And unfortunately, that's when we find people get vexed and anger and discord and faribbles and all those kinds of things can happen. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure you yeah? Anyone familiar? So the idea is any big event. I don't think this just has to do with Shabbos, except that Shabbos is a big event every week. We have guests coming, and there's still food that has to be get ready, and you can't cook on Shabbos, and everything has to be on the blech on time, etc. So while it's important to have all that preparation ready for Shabbos, and if I go through my Erev Shabbos to do this, polish the shoes, polish the silver, set the table. We had 31 guests this Shabbos for the Shabbos project, plus 9 kivmans, made 40 people around our Shabbos table. Plus, here's this. It's an interesting thing. Some people don't realize we love to have guests and we would love if people responded to our messages. Some people don't realize it says RSVP, right? And then when Shul finishes, and we had a big crowd, and it was very nice that everybody came for Shabbos project, and now you have some extras, some people who sit down on seats when they never booked, and it creates a very unpleasant situation. What am I supposed to do? All right, so now we have to go get tables and chairs and do family hold back. That we're not gonna, I won't eat the main course just to make sure that there's enough for everybody else. And then we have some very wonderful people in the shul who think it's nice to invite people without asking my wife. Yeah. So it's very important that people should know there's a law in the Talmud, Ein Oirech Machnasar. One guest does not have the right to start inviting more guests. And in a home like ours where we love to have guests, it could still become problematic. And now when it's a small Shabbos, we always love to fill a few extra seats. And we'll always make room. But I'm just mentioning this because we should all be aware of those situations. And it's strange to me, you know, somebody grabs a seat, but the people who actually booked don't have a place. It becomes very difficult. It's unfortunate. It's a pet peeve. But either way, even when this happens, I want to say it is very important that we make sure that we don't blow the fuse. Okay? It's happened before. Maybe I did. Or maybe I go into the kitchen and murmur to myself, I can't believe. But let's keep our cool. Let's keep our calm. We cannot control others. What's the serenity prayer? Dear God, give me this. Say it again. Not the power of serenity. There's a serenity prayer about to control myself, to realize I can't control others, but I could control myself, and to know the difference. I forget the exact prayer. Unfortunately, I never joined AA. My name is AA, Aaron Arias. I never felt like I have to join the AA. But if you're in the AA, you know the prayer very well. And we can't control others, but we can control ourselves. Thank you, very good. And that's the point. If anger and discord arise in the whole experience, it could destroy the Shabbos meal. It could destroy what we're trying to build up. We want to have an oasis. We want to have a pleasant experience. And what happens now? That we blew it. We get angry and we get faribble and we quarrel. It's not good. So I'm speaking from an experience that just happened this past week. We made a plan. Was I a little bit destroy. We still, and by the way, we still had leftover food with 5 extra people. So we wound up taking tables out. And by the way, there was another strange thing that didn't happen this time, a previous time, when we made extra room for more people. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of people left in the middle of the meal, and you find that the seats. So I don't know how to deal with that, but that's just the way it goes. And that's life, c'est la vie. I'm saying we should all be considerate. Don't take advantage of others. Be menschlich. But at the same time, for me, and here's a vort that my wife's great-grandfather, his name was Rabbi Yeshaya Alevi Horowitz. My father used to quote it because sometimes in our own home this could happen. And he would say, the verse says, Lo tavar away, she should not burn a fire. A fire should not burn on Shabbos. Says Rabbi Yeshaya Alevi Horowitz, known as the Shalah HaKadosh, he would say, my friends, when Shabbos comes, don't let the fire of discord, the heat of anger overcome. And it's a beautiful, profound vart that we have to be extra careful to avoid causing that domestic strife, that contention that can happen. That just as it's forbidden to light a fire on Shabbos, don't let the fire of discord get in the way. And that could be very, very dangerous and could cause unpleasant things. It can make a very unpleasant meal. And that's what Raz said before. That's the Satan. The Satan sometimes causes that there should be discord. I have just an interesting note here from the Gemara. The Gemara relates a story about 2 men who the Satan would induce to quarrel with each other every Friday afternoon. And eventually, Rabbi Meir made peace between them. The fact that they would fight, especially on Erev Shabbos, he said, was telling. So we have to realize, don't let that fire, that discord, that quarrel get in the way. And this has to do things pleasantly, softly, gently. Don't spur anger and antagonism that unfortunately can ruin the Shabbos experience. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Satan is also a manifestation created by God, just as we said before. Even negativity all comes from Hashem, but it's our choice. God created a world with free choice. Free choice means we could choose good. We have a Yetzer Tov, which inspires us and motivates us to do good. But in order for us not to be robots, we're not AI, right? We also have an opposing side called Satan, or called Yetzer Hara, evil inclination. It's all created by God to give us free choice. Pardon? You can't blame it on the Satan and say the Satan did it. It's we who does it. But the Satan might be the instigator. The Satan, I am making anything, yeah. The Satan is an instigation. It's just like we have a Yetzer Hara, an evil inclination, that gives us a desire for something negative. Okay, I'm questioning your Kabbalah classes now. This is Kabbalah 101, basics. Yeah?
He's praying, he doesn't listen to me. He's got a job to do. He doesn't overstep his boundaries that we gave him. And at the same time, he's telling me he's praying, don't do it.
So the Zohar gives a very mature example for this. This is the Zohar's example. The Zohar says, imagine a king wants to bring out the best in the prince. He's training the prince to be the next leader. But the prince has to, you can't just throw the prince into the deep end and say, yeah, now be a good leader. We've seen many instances where people who grew up with a silver spoon in their mouth, and they don't know what to do. And the next person, King Solomon was great, but his children were corrupted. And unfortunately, this happens over and over. Says the Zohar, the king wants to test the ethics, the morals, the values of the prince. So the king, in this example, a very adult-oriented one, hires a prostitute. What's the job of this harlot? He says to her, listen, I need the best prostitute in all of Joburg. And I want you to try to seduce the prince. Now, between you and me right now, as we're having this discussion, do you think the king really wants his prince to fall into the trap of the prostitute? No, absolutely not. But at the same time, should the prostitute not go to work? Because the prostitute is really an employee of the king. but at the same time, knowing that the king doesn't want the prince to be seduced by her, she shouldn't do her job. So she shouldn't go to work. You think she'll get paid if she doesn't do her job? No, the king says, I hired you to do the job. In fact, I want you to do the best you could. And I want my son to exercise restraint to the best of his ability. Now, what happens when this prostitute does all her shtick and tries to get the child, the prince to concede to her advances? And what brings out the best of this prince is if he resists all her temptations. Again, I'm not articulating it to the best, but I hope it clarifies this concept of why God, to give us really true free choice, Hashem has to, and when on Shabbos, when we're supposed to be united and in brotherhood and sisterhood and love and harmony with each other, punk, then is when the Yetzer Hara will kick in. So just before Shabbos comes in, the Talmud says, is when this Maisa Satan, we call it, but it's the workings of the Satan. The Satan works in overdrive at that time because that's when you're supposed to be at your best behavior. You know what they call it in English? Murphy's Law. Heard of Murphy's Law? Oh, that's why we sing Shalom Aleichem to try to bring peace. So I hope it clarifies it a little bit. Abyssal. Okay, I'm not the most articulate, but I know you are. So I'm going to challenge you to crystallize and bring it back to us tomorrow in a clearer way. How's that? There we go. Who? Hans Kronier? The devil made me do it. No, the thing is, that's the point here, is that we can't blame it on the devil. And that's what we're saying here is maybe the Satan, maybe the devil, but maybe the devil gets in the way. The devil's in the details, but it's up to us to overcome it. You can never claim that it's not my fault. No, you can blame people. Once we blame everything on the devil and the Satan, and I think that's why you're asking the question. It's coming from there, because then we can just blame the Satan. The Satan is there as God's angel, as God's messenger to bring out the best in us, not for us to capitulate to the Satan's advances. Hope it clarifies that, but I'm happy you asked. It's a good question. But it's all the same thing about the choice. But that's up to you. Know what they say? There's an expression. Oh gosh, now I'm forgetting it. The fox you feed more. That's a Goyish expression. But basically, the size you're going to exercise more. That's the one that's going to act better. The Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Hara. Yeah. Ooh. Ooh, if you add the reish to fume, you'll get frum. I want to say, as I always do, that what does it take to go from try to triumph? A little bit of oomph. Very good. So, my friends, we're gonna fall. We're gonna make mistakes. We're gonna sometimes get caught in the wrong thing, and that's part of Satan's trap. Okay, sometimes the prince might fall for the prostitute. Okay, that's a little bit extreme. But my point is, we still have to hold our ground, our values, and be the best we could be. That's really our mission, our challenge. And it's not always easy, but that's what we have to do. And so, my friends, let's take a few more minutes before we wrap it up. That was the point here. Don't let that fire. And maybe, you know what I will say, you know which fire you could have at Shabbos? The fire of passion and enthusiasm, the fire of light, of being a light to all those around us. That's the fire we should have on Shabbos. And maybe that's why our sages are telling us this, because sometimes that discord that could get in the way. A different kind of light. Yeah. I will also say something else. In Tanya, there's a tremendous emphasis and discussion of this concept called Mayach Shalit Alalev, mind over emotions, or mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. Very good. And how we could do that. You know, sometimes we're very sensitive, or maybe we have a pent up energy, whatever it might be. And can we train ourselves? And sometimes we could, sometimes we can't, sometimes we're better, sometimes we're worse. I remember I once listened to a lecture from Rabbi Manish Friedman, and he said, if you don't take yourself too seriously, then, you'll let things slide by. And punk, that day I happened to be in shul, and somebody called me a meshugana. Okay, the normal me would get very, very, what's the word? Insulted and sensed. You calling me a meshugana? You're the meshugana. I didn't respond. I said, thank you. I know I'm a Michiganer. I have family that live in Michigan. It's fine. I'm a Michigan. It's okay. And you know what? I saw the guy's reaction when I was like, okay. It was so different. Like he couldn't get me. Why he wanted to get me? Why he had it in for me? I don't know. But sometimes it happens. We have it in for somebody. I don't know why. Maybe I do that too. It's part of the human condition that we sometimes have this mishigas comes into our head. And punk that day, I heard Manis Friedman say that, and I let it slide off like water on a duck's back. And he couldn't get me. And that's why I say, don't let your enemies live rent free in your head. Don't let these situations consume you. Just take it easy. But the whole idea of Tanya, this mayach shalit alev, of our mind controlling our emotions, is tremendous in that sense about how we won't get stuck in those situations, and we'll really be in a better way. So tomorrow, please God, we'll talk more about that and why we sing Lecha Dodi. What's the connection of Lecha Dodi to all this? It's going to be interesting. And I have a fascinating story to tell you about Boi Kala. So I think I gave away the punchline of the story now, but remind me to tell it to you tomorrow. It's a good story. Why? What happened last week? You don't have to tell us. Fine, no problem. I'm here. I'm available. Ladies and gents, sei gesund. Have a great day. Enjoy lunch. Enjoy bingo. Enjoy art. If you're not part of Art with Andrea, you don't know what you're missing out on. And my friends, tomorrow, if you want to be at Beating, please speak to the Rebbitzin, book your spot. And if you want to be at the Woolworths on Wednesday, speak to the Rebbitzin. Also, remember, while Wednesday I will not be here, I'm back next week. What was I